Circular CircuitPythonistas, it's Prof G. Are you ready to be round display renegades? Well, in this quick lesson, I'm going to show you how you can wire a Raspberry Pi Pico up to a standard display powered by the GC9A01A controller. That's a chip that's often used in these 1.28-inch 240 by 240 display that I'll be demonstrating. Now, this display is flat, but I found a cheap lens online and put it over the display for a cool effect. And I'll show you the code running a wandering eye, but there are plenty of cool demos that you can adapt for your own. So let's hack! So you'll find these GC9A01A round displays all over. Adafruit sells a really nice one that has a nifty iSpy ribbon connector. Now, if you wanted to use that, you'd also need one of these iSpy breakout boards. Now, because it allows you to use a ribbon between the display and the iSpy connector, it's great for concealing a whole mess of wires for wearable projects like this cool Mad Eye. I actually built this Mad Eye without using one of these ribbon connectors, and I should really rebuild this because right now I have a whole mess of wires inside of the band. But in this lesson, I'm using one of the cheapo displays that doesn't have the nice iSpy connector ribbon. And here's the wiring that I've used for this display. Now, the wiring might differ from what's suggested in the Adafruit Learn Guide, but this wiring should work with the Adafruit Adalog or Cowbell with microSD card reader and built-in STEMMA-QT port, and my students use that add-on board. So I want the wiring in this lesson to be compatible with any of the other products that they're using. You should also find that this wiring scheme doesn't conflict with the Adafruit Cowbell with the camera in it as well. Now, my cheapo display has the I2C pin name silk-screened on them, but this is definitely a SPY display. So it uses 5 pins plus power and ground, 7 wires all together. And here's the wiring scheme that I used. VCC labeled on the display is the power pin, and that goes to Pico 3.3 volt power. Ground can go to any Pico ground. SEL goes to the Pico GP18, and this is really the SPY SEK or serial clock to make sure that the signals won't stomp over each other. That's important because a board can control multiple SPY peripherals at a time. Exactly what you'd be doing if you had a microSD controller and this kind of a display. Now, the SDA pin on the display goes to GP19 on the Pico. That's really the SPY MOSI pin, which is a signal going from the board to the display. DC on the display goes to Pico GP21. That's the data command pin, which might say something like data incoming, I'm sending color data, or command incoming, I'm sending brightness information. The TCS pin on the display goes to Pico pin GP20. That's the chip select, which is how the board sends to a specific SPY device. Since again, you could have multiple SPY devices connected to a single microcontroller. And RST is reset. We want to wire that to the Pico's GP15 pin. This could send a command that says something like start the communication chain over. Now, the beauty of CircuitPython is we don't really have to pay attention to any of these details after we've written the code to set up the display. So now that you've got everything wired up, I've got some sample code for you in the GitHub repo, which runs this cool wiggly eye demo. Now, I've linked my repo in the video description, but I cannot take credit for this. I've simply adapted code produced by the incomparable Todd Butt, a fantastic hacker, friend of the Maker community, and co-host of the Bootloader podcast. Thanks, Todd. And since this is an intermediate lesson, I'm going to assume that everyone here has a board set up with the latest version of CircuitPython and that you know how to identify the libraries that you need for this project. You know how to get them on your CircuitPy board, or even better, you know how to use the CircUp utility to look at your code, find the latest libraries on the internet, and install them on your CircuitPy volume automatically. Don't know how to do that? See an earlier lesson in the playlist. I'll get you set up. So here's your fast track to Wiggly Eye. So go to this GitHub repo at the URL on screen and linked in the description. Remember, a repo is a repository that's a holding place for programming projects. And head up to the green code button, click and hold it, and a drop-down message will appear with the option that says download to zip. Select that. My browser is configured to ask me where I want to save. If yours isn't, your file saving to your downloads folder. Then find the file that was downloaded. My browser automatically decompresses zip files. If yours doesn't, double-click to unzip. And you should get a folder with the same name as the GitHub repo with -main at the end. Let's look inside that bad boy. Now, you should have your board plugged in and see CircuitPy on your desktop. And when you open up the folder that we just downloaded, you'll find another folder inside that says IMGS. That contains the images of the eyes that we're going to use in our Wiggly Eye demo. Drag that folder, IMGS, over into your CircuitPy volume. And there are a bunch of other files in this folder that we're not going to use. So I've got some code that might even be for other boards. But the code that we want is this one here named 1.28-inch round TFT to Pico. Make sure it's the Pico one if you're using a Pico. .py. But for code to execute right away on our board, we need to rename this file. So we're going to rename it code.py, all in lowercase, and then I'm going to copy this over to my CircuitPy volume, replacing any code.py that's there, and we don't see anything yet, because our code needs some specific libraries to be installed on the board. Now you can delete any unused libraries from your lib folder, but if you have extra libraries in there, they won't interfere with your code. Now I'm going to be opening up the lib folder on my Pico so that you can see the installation. I've got nothing in here right now. And to install the file, I'm going to use CircuitPython, and I'm going to access that within my PyCharm CE program. That's the free professional Python editor that my students use. Not using PyCharm and want to get set up? There is, of course, a lesson in our playlist for that. So I'll get into the project on my CircuitPy board and open up the code.py file, and we see all the code in here that we got from the GitHub repo, and we copied that code.py file over to CircuitPy. And to install the library files that this code needs, I'm going to use the circup program. So I'll open up PyCharm's terminal window, and because I've already installed circup as per the prior tutorial, I'll enter circup space install space -a at the percent prompt, press return, and from the magic of circup, we can see that it's analyzing the code.py file, figuring out which libraries we need, finding those on the internet, and if I show you my empty lib folder and my CircuitPy volume, well, it's not empty anymore. Circup installed the Adafruit-GC9A01A.mpy file and the Adafruit_image load folder, and these are in the standard libraries download so that you can, of course, drag those over if you do installations the old school way, but Circup makes things way easier and eliminates a lot of mistakes. That's why I have all my students use Circup. And after this folder is installed, you can see that there's lots of other extra stuff in here. But if you didn't use Circup, you can just drag the one file and folder over from the downloaded Adafruit libraries, and you get everything you need. Now again, we see this is in our CircuitPy volume, but even more groovy, if you look at your properly wired display and board, you'll see that you've got an eye that is a wigglin'. Congrats, maker! Down below, I used the ls command to find where my board was and the to command to act as a REPL so I can see what's happening in my program, but I'm actually not going to use that now. Now let's go through and quickly walk through the code to see what it's doing, just in case you want to make any modifications or work on your own display goodness. And remember, there are lots more examples that you can find by searching online, including several that ToddBot has compiled. But let's look at our code so we see that we have the libraries that we're using and how they're imported into our code. When working with a Display.io library that works with displays, we always start by releasing any displays that might be currently connected. Now this is the configuration for a Pico using the wiring scheme that I showed you earlier, and if you have a different board or a different wiring scheme, you need to make the changes here. These boards are almost always 240 width by 240 height, but if you've got something different but it's the same chipset, just make that change here. Then we read in the two BMP image files. Now one, the eyeball is without the center iris part, it looks like this, and the other has the iris. Now the iris is smaller and it's transparent around the edges, so we achieve the wiggly effect simply by moving the smaller iris image with its transparent edge, these gray bits won't show through, around the top of the eyeball image which is in the back. That's essentially what's going on. Now you know how the magic works. And by the way, ToddBot has a lizard eye that you can experiment with if you want to try something different. And these commands here also automatically read in the color palette used by each BMP image so that our code knows which colors to use. Now here we get the size of the iris file, and we find its center, and I set the eyeball to move a maximum of 30 pixels in any direction from the center. Now you can make changes here, but if you set this too high, you might see that the iris will move over the eyeball image and back of it in a way that looks less natural. Now this code uses object-oriented programming, and the eyeball itself with its display and properties is an object. It's created with this init function, and the display and display bus functions are how we set up our wired up display. Now you can see we're using the variables we used in our configuration part of the code earlier. These refer to the pin wirings we use. We also set the dimensions of our display, and rot is the rotation of the image. So if you want to rotate the image that you're seeing in a degree rotation like 90 degrees, 180, 270 for example, just set that here. Now note this code is set up for displays that use the GC9A01A chip, but because CircuitPython is so standard, if you changed your setup code for any kind of other type of display, the rest of the code should work fine, and you'll see other tutorials in my playlist that cover other displays with other chipsets, but that use similar commands. The CircuitPython libraries for controlling displays and doing things like writing text and graphics are all fabulously standard. So here we set up a display by creating a main group and adding that as the root of our display object. Then we create two tile grids. You can consider these as sort of rectangles that we draw on screen, one for the larger eye image, and then on top of this we'll have one for the smaller iris. The pixel shaders are the color palette used, and these were actually read in with the BMP file that we read in earlier. Then we append the two tile grids, one on top of the other, into our display. We get a current position of the iris, and we set the target to the center. So at the start, the current iris is in the center. We're not moving yet. And next, we set a time that we need to elapse before we change directions. And we'll set this at the current time so that we change directions right away. Now we get the current time with this time.monotonic. That's all that's doing. And later in the code, we can see when we go past time monotonic, or the current time, we're going to get a new location and a new distance it will take to get to that location. Now the new location is going to be tx and ty, which is target x and target y. And the next time property is how long we should spend traveling to that new target. The maximum potential time we can spend is twitch, so we'll use this as the upper bound of the random value we create for how much time we should take. So that's the setup code. The update function or method of the I class down below is what we call each time we want to move our I. Now the first thing we want to do is to calculate the x and y coordinates that we're moving to in this call to update. Now if you don't know, computer coordinates start in the upper left of screen, with that being 0, 0. Move to the right, the first value, the x value increases. Move down, the y value increases. Now because this display doesn't have any corners, if you use a point that's close to one of the corners, you might not see it. And if you can't tell what's going on here and you want to figure this out, you can print out the variables that we're calculating, but this is really elegant code. Now you'll notice if you look at your eyeball that it doesn't move at a constant speed to its new location. It starts out faster and then slows down as it approaches its new target, just like an eye would move. Well, that's what's happening with the math here. We use 75% of the current position and 25% of the target position, and as we call this each time we make a tiny movement, well, this is going to make sure that we move faster at first and we slow as we approach the target. Now we're only going to make one move each time we call update, but we're going to call update over and over again, and this creates the illusion of constant movement. Now also, if you run the numbers, you'll see that we never actually mathematically reach the target, although down here we use the int function to make sure that we're not using decimals. We need to plot integers, and it might appear as if we've stopped, but we're still calculating movements that are so tiny they don't show up. So all the stuff up here calculates our next individual movement. Maybe it's just a few pixels or less. But how do we know we need to stop moving in one direction and go in another direction? Well, we look at the next time property of the I class. Time monotonic is the current time, so if the current time is beyond the next time, then it's time to move in a new direction. Then we calculate a new random value to figure out how long we should take to move in a different direction, and that's going to be between 0.25 and twitch, which is the maximum time to twitch. We set that up as 2 seconds when we initialized our I class. You can change that to if you want to. Make that a smaller value as long as it's above 0.25, and you'll see the I twitch much faster. So we set a new time, which will be how long we spend moving in this new direction, and we create a new target, the TX and the TY, which is the new location that we move to. And then finally, the call to refresh down here is going to plot that iris image in a new location calculated at the new target X and Y, and that's going to be on top of the eyeball image. Now down here you see that we've created a list that can contain as many eyes as we have displays. So technically it's possible to hook up more than one display, although here we only use one eye, so our list just has one element or one eye inside of it. And in the while true statement, we go through all the eyes, for us it's just one eye, and constantly call update, which will calculate our new XY position based on our target. It's going to set our iris to the new position, moving fast at first, then slow. We'll check to see if we need to change direction, and if it is time to change direction, then we get a new time to move in that direction, and we set the new target X and Y. And that, my friend, is it. So hopefully that walkthrough was helpful. Thanks to ToddBot, and as always to the wonderful Adafruit CircuitPython team that makes the goodness happen. And if you like this, do me a solid, like, subscribe, share with your homies, and if you build something from this tutorial, a blue sky post me with a video or photo of it at me and hashtag BuiltWithProfG, and every week I randomly select a winner of the ultra glorious Make Something Awesome sticker that you can bestow on your laptop or anything else. I send them around the world for free if you win. Stay making, my friends, and make something awesome.